Breaking news. Donald Trump will use NATO summit to brag about the UK, says Republican representative. U.S. President Donald Trump will use the NATO summit to brag about the UK to the rest of the NATO countries and say get your act in gear, according to the chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Sarah Elliott. U.S. President Donald Trump will brag about the UK to the rest of the NATO countries and say get your act in gear at the NATO summit in Brussels as they discuss defense spending commitment of 2% of GDP, said the chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Sarah Elliott. Ms. Elliott told Talk Radio's Julia Hartley-Brewer, "These countries have plenty of resources to up their defense and the American taxpayer cannot be carrying the load. They need to step up. They need to participate in NATO if they want the United States to defend them." I think if anything President Trump is going to highlight and brag about the UK to the rest of the NATO countries and say get your act in gear. The U.S. president has already lamented on Twitter his concerns over the EU countries failing to pay into the NATO defense budget the 2% of their gross domestic product, GDP. On Tuesday he tweeted, "NATO countries must pay more, the United States must pay less. Very unfair." And a few hours later he added, "Many countries in NATO, which we are expected to defend, are not only short of their current commitment of 2%, which is low, but are also delinquent for many years in payments that have not been made. Will they reimburse the US?" Ms. Elliott added, "Everyone should know there is no doubting his commitment to NATO. Donald Trump is here to be a disruptor, he is here to keep people off balance. He has not backed out of NATO and his Secretary of Defense and his Vice President have backed Article 5 of NATO and that is not going to change with this president. I think he wants people to pay their fair share of which they agreed to do. These countries agreed to pay 2% of their GDP. The U.S. president pointed out that Germany only pays 1% of GDP on defense while the U.S. spends 4.2%. Mr. Trump has made it clear that he is considering pulling American military and cutting spending on defending Europe unless other NATO partners pay their fair share. Currently the UK is one of the few NATO members to meet the minimum of spending 2% GDP on defense and security.